Number 29, Pom. Usually when we go and get a recruit, there's a bit of hype around them and we, as fans, get excited and we tell everyone how they're going to be A-graders and they do the flashy things. I don't think I've been this excited for a recruit for a different reason, because this guy is pure, just work, just 1%ers, does things the right way. What are your thoughts about George Hewett and how he's going to fit into this team?
I think you're spot on. I think when you look at the hype of recruits, even in the media, George Hewett kind of is the George Hewett in any article. It's Chera, it's Zach Williams last year, it's the big money recruits, and then it's they've recruited George Hewett as an afterthought. And you look at what he brings as a footballer, you would say out of all the signings probably in the last decade, this is an actual essential need, particularly based on last year. We didn't have any midfield grunt. George Hewett is midfield grunt. That's what he did at Sydney. He's the perfect role model as well. What he did with Sydney last year, protecting his young midfield, he's got a degree, really, in protecting young kids and filtering them through the system. So I thought this was probably, when we do this video next year, the most important acquisition this football club's made.
There's so many angles that I'm thinking of in my head as to what I want to talk about next. I think the club put out a series of photos recently with basically the new players holding up a board and telling us a little bit about themselves and what they like. And I don't know why this excited me, but one of the questions on the board was favorite food, and he had written chicken and rice. And it kind of resonates with who he is in terms of his reputation. And I cast our minds back to when we first recruited him, and you pointed this out. You were searching through the Sydney forums and seeing the fan reaction, and I think you're onto one when you see the fans really hurting to lose a player. And the reality with Sydney is he didn't leave Sydney because he wasn't good enough, or maybe some people will think he was. They obviously have a plethora of young talent coming through, and I guess the role for him didn't suit, or the situation didn't suit his strengths. And you talk about what we need and what we needed from last year and the year before. It's someone to help cover the bleeding that we have that comes from our midfield.
Mate, spot on. And I think if anyone wants to see what does he bring, go to the 1-point loss last year Sydney had against GWS, and you look at what role he had. He was effectively stopping Matt de Boer tagging, and the 13 tackles, 20 touches, and Matt de Boer literally had no impact on what Sydney were trying to do. Luke Parker had 34 touches. It was the second most he had. Matt de Boer was on Parker, but it was that tagging a tagger, and seeing that Matt de Boer, who literally, if you play fantasy, he ruins your weekend because he always takes out the best ball getter. That is what Hewett brings. He sacrifices his game to make his best player able to play. And you saw that against St Kilda. You saw how Hewett operates. He was invariably at the centre bounce, blocking and shepherding to allow Chera to run through, to allow Cripps to pick the ball up. They're the little incidentals that Hewett is. And back to that board, he's all business. Hewett isn't about TikToks, isn't about do you like him or not. I guess George Hewett couldn't give a fuck if we like him or not. He's about doing his job. That's what turns him on. And that's what we need.
Yeah, there's something about him. I feel like maybe it's a maturity in me. I'm not necessarily as excited as what I used to be about these big names. And now I just want workers. I want job doers. And watching the first practice match against St Kilda, I was really keen to see how he would be deployed. And one of the things that kind of pleasantly surprised me, I should say, is how strong he really is. He's going to be able to match up with anyone in any team in terms of not getting pushed off the ball and holding his own. And, you spoke about the tackles in that game last year, and he is a tackling machine. And there's a notion as well that he seems to be a replacement or a next in line to take that Ed Kerno role that we've had for many years. Is that what you see with him? How do you actually see him playing?
Well, I mean, I love Ed Kerno. I think he's a great servant of the club, but I think Ed Kerno is the Wish equivalent of George Hewett. George Hewett has so much skill sets that, God bless Ed, that he doesn't have. Like, George is a footballer as well. He can use the ball. He can take the game on. I think an interesting thing about George as well is watch him tackle. He doesn't tackle nice. Like, he looks a really nice guy as well, George Hewett. But you watch him, he hurts people when he tackles. He falls on them. And that is them little incidentals that Carlton need to change. I think we're a nice team. And I think a lot of teams know that we're the kind of team that if we do have a late tackle, we'll pick you up and apologise. George Hewett ain't about that. George Hewett is about making a statement. And I think what Voss has said, Ed's now going to be that VFL guy that we were begging for, a mature guy in the VFL teaching the next gen what it takes to be a footballer for this club. I think George and Cripper, look out. I think that combination is scary for most AFL sides.
Yeah. I mean, I picture a guy. I guess we'll watch this again at the end of the season, and when we do the player reviews, I picture a guy that's going to give us something like 21 to 24 touches a game, 6-ish tackles a game on average. I feel like he'll have some games where he's up there 9, 10, 11 tackles. If he has a down game, I feel like it would only be 3 or 4, which is still not terrible. And that's the exciting thing. And then also he uses the ball pretty well. He finds the short kick. He hits targets. He handballs out to space. And then it's the help for Cripps. And the narrative around that, I think, has changed because we've got other players there that do help Cripps. But I mean helping Cripps with the physical side of things. I think his body's ready to do that. And listen, I'm not sure what the coaching staff have told him or how they're going to motivate him or if they're looking to him to be a bit more as of an offensive player. But that's something, if he's now focusing on being a little bit more free, that's an exciting prospect. Having said that, if we do need, a tagger for a quarter or a half or even a game, I feel like he can still do that.
So he has a lot of tricks in his arsenal. So he's got it all, really. And he's a pure defensive midfielder, which I think is what we lack. I think he views his tackles, his stoppage work, like Walsh will probably view an inside 50 in a goal. That is what he will go home at night and go, you know what, I've won this game. That's it. And it takes a special kind of character to do that. And I think it rubs off. We saw it against St Kilda. When St Kilda got that run on, that's where you really noticed Hewett. He was like, right, let's stand up and be counted in these contests. And it draws people in. Yeah,
no, I'm pumped for it. Those of you at home, what are your thoughts on George Hewett? Did you watch much of him last year and the years before? I really didn't, if I'm honest. And that's the beauty of him. Unassuming, doesn't stand out, but you look at the stat sheet and you see a job's done at the end of it. So let us know what you think in the comments below and we'll chat about it there.